Welcome to Things You Don't Know. Today, we're going to look at a exciting new project that Dr. Dineen has embarked upon. He spent a lot of time trying to obtain funds for his research with limited success, but a different opportunity has come about that I know will be of interest to our listeners. And he is doing a bang up job, folks. I know you just cannot imagine how much effort he's put into this and how fondly he talks about it. So,
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Weaver. I'm flattered by your praise, and I really am giving my all. Um, Many things sometimes seem difficult on the surface to understand. I've spent a lot of time trying to finish the publication of my doctoral dissertation with some limited success, but there can be good things come out of difficult things. Just like something seems easy, but it turns out to have a broader purpose and much more depth. I think the archetypal example for the podcast here is our discovery of Caesar Drake's grave being the foundation of this whole podcast project, or my casual allusion to my love for lime coke, as I've said, leading to a wonderful podcast discussion of the Cold War, the role of soft drinks in history, Pepsi having a large navy, and many other cultural and political concerns. But I won't keep you in suspense any longer, folks. I've been asked to participate in the development of a historical writing project that I've got a small grant for, which, if it is successful, will lead to the development of a moving historical exhibit, a number of websites, publications, and other projects relating to the semi-quincentennial, that's a fancy Latin word for 250th anniversary of American independence in 2026. This has given me a grant. It could lead to a much larger grant, and I like to think it's a link to other possibilities for employment and other activities.
okay. Well, I'm sure that this will bear a lot of fruit. And it does really sound very exciting. I'm very curious about some more in-depth information about this whole thing. Can you fill me in a little bit here?
I'll do my best. Well, this project is the brainchild of two groups, the Westfield Historical Society and a group that I hadn't heard of until just about 6 months ago, the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route Trail Group. That's a society that looks at the French American alliance and its valuable role in gaining U.S. independence, as well as several lesser known battles in New Jersey towards the end of the Revolution, which led to the confirmation of U.S. independence. We all know about the battles of Trenton and Princeton in 1776, but these happened later in the war. There's a strong attempt, to coin a phrase, to look at things you don't know, ha ha. In this case, about our nation's birth pangs in all of their agony and ultimate victory and glory.
Yeah, I've never heard of the Washington Rochambeau Society. When did it start? Or it was related to any other group? I mean, what's the deal? It sounds really interesting, and it sounds like these are people who really care about history. And yeah, what is it?
Well, you're absolutely right. It was an organization that's been around the entire country, but the New Jersey focus began around 2010. Its initial purpose was to collect and collate information being uncovered about slavery in central New Jersey. New Jersey, I'm very sorry to say, being the last northern state to abolish slavery, at the same time allowing African American men to vote, and also to look at lesser known Northeastern revolutionary battles. It's led by a man named Dr. Robert Selig, who was an international revolutionary historian. And as the time comes closer to 2026, Dr. Seelig and many other historians want to bring greater exposure to hidden groups and hidden aspects of revolutionary history because the story is a lot more complex than the version we all got in middle school.
Yeah, that's pretty much the case for almost anything in history and many other subjects too. It does sound very interesting. Is this society doing this all by themselves, or are there other groups that are going to participate? Maybe you could say a few words about the importance of remembering these events and how they might connect to the present in keeping with our notion of boots on the ground history.
Well, I'm very glad that you mentioned that. My interest in history in general, and specifically American history, began when I was a toddler, about 2.5, 3 years old, observing with my mother and my late grandparents all the excitement of the bicentennial period in 1976 in New Jersey. I remember a group of men dressed up as British and loyalist troops in red and green marched down our street, and I got the biggest kick out of it. Many other groups, to answer your other question, including the Martin Luther King Association of Westfield and the Sand Hill Native American Historical Association, are playing a very important role in championing awareness of the contributions of underrepresented groups in the nation's founding. We've tended to present American history in this period as exclusively the providence of white people, and that's not the case. Not every African American was a slave. Not every Native American lived in isolation from people of other backgrounds. And this idea of a multiracial society is very important today still. The country is still grappling with the idea of a multi-ethnic, multiracial, varied society of different peoples with their own contributions, desires, and abilities to improve society for all. And it really was, I've found in my studies of the revolution, the efforts of ordinary, unheralded soldiers of all backgrounds who accomplished the foundation of the country just as much as Washington, Lafayette, and Hamilton did, those well-known political and military giants.
I think it's very important to refresh our memory of the founding principles of the nation. And what better way to do that than to uncover lesser known facts and people that played very large roles both in thought and deed in establishing those principles? We lose sight of these principles at our peril. I'm thinking about some very suspect actions we have taken involving other nations and people, forgetting that self-determination and national identity is very important, especially when cultures get subsumed. I know you don't want to give too much away, as we are planning on doing a longer podcast with some of the leaders of this effort. Maybe you could share just a few notes about others who are playing a vital role in planning and research and execution of this upcoming event. And Dr. Dineen, this time, don't exclude yourself. Include yourself in this, okay?
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree with you that as a nation, we have a tendency to assume that our culture and our way of thinking is perfect and other people should go along with it, whether they like it or not. But to answer your question, yes, Miss Julie Dugard, a very prominent revolutionary scholar and one of the key figures of the Washington Rochambeau Society, wanted to give the world an awareness of all the hidden figures and untapped realities, as she called them, of the revolution. She recruited a half dozen scholars, each with a particular area of expertise, to seek out and explore under-researched areas. Now, I don't want to give everything away, but a large focus will be on the roles of women in the revolution, the unique contributions of African Americans, and the value of the French alliance in nurturing America's independence and unique identity. This will immerse prospective viewers of our material, listeners of the podcast, and lay persons in a different type of understanding. Dr. Claire Garland, for example, is a woman of Lenape background, will explore the political, economic, and military structure of the Lenni Lenape, the largest Native American group in New Jersey. The Lenape have a unique role as they are one of the few Native American groups that did not side with the British during the founding of the United States. Our lead researcher, Dr. Robert Sealing, is a prominent researcher, as I said before, with an international reputation. With a strong fluency in German and French, Dr. Sealing is doing international research and looking at the services of various French military leaders and the German Hessians as their type of European style warfare came to a head during the final years of the revolution. He's been working on what we call the trail and the history of this area for many decades. Our ultimate goal is to use the support of the research to create an outdoor accessible educational exhibit in Westfield in time for 2026. The exhibit is created in consultation with members of the community. For those from outside New Jersey, this trail is an area in Westfield on which a substantial number of American troops and their French allies marched towards a decisive battle in Westfield, New Jersey in August 1781. There is folklore evidence that we are trying to uncover in writing that a division of Lenape warriors, as well as a large number of African American officers from both the 2nd New Jersey Militia, the 2nd Canadian Division in the Continental Army, and the 2nd Rhode Island Regiment, which made the Rhode Island Regiment made up the largest group of African Americans in the ranks, played a leading role in this victory at this battle in Westfield. This needs to be explored in greater depth as a lot of the material has not been found in writing yet.
Okay. Well, how did you get involved in this project? And what role are you playing?
Well, it was really a wonderful experience. About 6 months ago, I was asked to become involved in this project. My mother had gone to several meetings of the Washington Rochambeau Society, and Ms. Duggart had discovered our podcasts, particularly our podcasts on Caesar Drake and Harry Washington. These were two great men who found their way to freedom in a time of great social upheaval by fighting in the revolution on opposite sides. Soldiering in this time frame is a path to a self-directed life for so many people. 20,000 people are freed by the British and 5,000 by the United States. My part is to look at the role of African American soldiers, free and enslaved, in both armies during the independence struggle.
I am so glad you went to that graveyard at the Scotch Plains Baptist Church and found Caesar Drake's memorial. I know you have some interest in several other groups that are not traditionally highlighted. Are some of these other groups going to also receive some attention?
Yes, may I say, Dr. Weaver, I'm thrilled myself that I went and found the grave. Had I known at the time all the wonderful things it was going to make possible, I wouldn't have believed it. But to answer your question, I know the Continental Alliance with France is underanalyzed. We know about the Marquis de Lafayette, but not many of the other gallant French officers who did so much to help the country in its formative years. And I truly believe we will benefit as Americans and historians as well from looking at that in more depth.
I don't know about being underanalyzed. I'll defer to your expertise, but I am sure that the French played a vital role which has been undervalued, at least in the 20th century, as a result of some negative interactions between France and the United States. Maybe I'm wrong about that. What do you think?
Well, it's not the only factor, but Americans tend to assume, as the great British historian Andrew Roberts said, we emerged like Athena from Zeus's head, fully grown and fully armed with all the ability and knowledge we would ever need to be right about everything. We seem to feel it is our noblesse oblige to export our culture and our traditions around the globe, which has caused wonderful things to happen, but terrible things also. It's certainly a factor. We tend to forget in this country about the international impact of the revolution. I'm very pleased to see that another friend of mine, Miss Kendall Robinson, a valued member of the Historical Society, just won a Fulbright grant to go to Belgium, which was part of the Netherlands during the 18th century, to look at the contributions of Dutch naval officers and financiers in facilitating American
Okay.
independence.
Something happened in the phone lines or something. Could you start with I am pleased to see the recent?
Certainly, I am
Okay.
very pleased to see
Hold on.
the recent awarding of a
Um, I think because you're over driving the mic and etc., it is coming. The connection isn't stable for whatever reason. There must be some bad weather. But can you try it again? Because it faded out again.
I am pleased to see the recent awarding of a Fulbright grant to Miss Kendall Robinson, another valued member of the Historical Society, to travel to Belgium. Belgium was part of the Netherlands during the 18th century, and she's going to look at the contributions of Dutch naval officers and financiers in facilitating American independence.
You mentioned Dr. Claire Garland and noted her relation to the Lenape Native Americans. So I'm really wondering how much attention is going to be given to Native Americans in all this.
Well, there was a significant Native American contribution in terms of supplies, weapons, and armed units. Dr. Garland and her compatriot, Dr. Suzanne Chewing, yes, that's how her name is pronounced, a professor of psychology and Native American culture at Union College, they will be looking at psychological warfare and guerrilla tactics practiced by Native troops on both sides. I know, for example, at the Battle of the Short Hills in Scotch Plains, a small number of Lenape officers captured a number of turned Continental soldiers in the so-called Royal American Reformers. That's the British version of Chow Hoi from Vietnam, from whom the Lenape obtained detailed military intelligence. The purpose of this exploration into history is to increase the quality of information on U.S. and New Jersey history during the founding period and, quote, to tell a diverse story highlighting the contributions of underrepresented and discarded groups.
Yeah, it is very interesting to me that many of the marginalized groups made significant contributions on each side of the Revolutionary War. For example, Caesar Drake and Harry Washington are, as you like to say, poster adults for different sides, which I think that's hilarious. Do you want to share some insights concerning how and why people from these marginalized groups chose which side they would join? The evidence on this topic, it's kind of scanty and therefore conjecture rather than fact. And I admit that. I know that Harry Washington felt abused and undervalued, and obviously would have had some conflict with his former owner, George Washington. Whereas Caesar developed a different kind of relationship with his former owner.
You're quite correct. Please check out our two-part Caesar podcast and the Harry Washington story if you haven't already, or listen to it again. I think it's a difference in circumstance. Caesar gained his freedom, established himself as a businessman running his provisioner's store. He joined his former master's church. They remained on somewhat positive terms and became an elder, which is a mark of social distinction even now, much less in those days. He really believed that the idea of freedom was available to people of all backgrounds. Harry Washington had remained in bondage, had suffered from the cruel treatment of an overseer, had been punished by Washington for laughing at a joke he made appearing arrogant. So he had felt dehumanized and saw service with the British as the only way out. And empires in general tend to be more flexible to people of divergent backgrounds. Republics are very homogeneous and tend to think that there's a clearly defined hierarchy.
Okay. Interesting insights. It seems to me that there is a lesson to be learned from this fact that people can choose their path, even though others in their same group choose differently. Sometimes I think that we have forgotten that strong debate and different opinions are the bedrock of freedom and the making of good decisions. I'm not sure if Caesar and Harry ever met, but I am certain they would have fiercely argued over their differing allegiances. Yet, I would bet they would not have vilified or denigrated each other in the process. We would we would do well, I should say, to remember that lesson. Even George Washington learned when he talked with Harry.
If I may interrupt, you're talking about the meeting George and Harry Washington had in 1783 at the end of the war when the UK evacuated New York. George apologized to Harry for enslaving him, and they shook hands. That's something Washington almost never did, so it was a real mark of respect. This meeting caused George Washington to rethink his views on slavery, putting in his will that his slaves would be freed at his death. Harry, for his part, expressed his good wishes for the United States while making a new life for himself as a lawyer and judge in Canada. I don't know if they ever met. I do know Caesar had friends on the British side. That's the character of Cyrus in the podcast. But the idea of mutual respect for people with different opinions needs to be rediscovered. We cannot just get so obsessed with being right and having our own way that we damn anybody that disagrees with us.
Boy, I agree with that. And this respect does many things. First, of course, it makes things more peaceful. But even more important is that having input from many different points of view gives a more complete understanding and thus leads to better decisions. We need to really remember that, particularly in this day and time.
You're quite correct. With all of the polarization and out hatred among people with different opinions, it's very disconcerting. But I believe, as you said, differences and respect are the foundation, because if everyone thinks and acts the same on everything, we're not even fully human. We're just robots. That's not a society you and I want to live in, I don't think.
No, not at all.
Well, friends, we really enjoyed making this podcast. And when I get back from my pilgrimage to Gettysburg, a place I really enjoy going to, we'll continue with other things, including our alternative history. But I want to say, as we always do, please give us a like, leave a comment, make suggestions. And history is not just made by an elite, it's made by ordinary men and women every day.
Absolutely. And yes, it was interesting to do this. And I hope not only that you will give us a like and subscribe and make comments, but pay attention to this celebration coming up. If you get a chance, go see it. I have a hunch that this is going to be pretty ding dong special, and you should go.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, bye bye for now.
So long, folks.